Hey everybody, Matt Bell with Electric Violin Shop. Good to see you guys. We got to answer a question today that is, how am I going to spread out my budget across all of the things that I need to buy in order to have this whole electric violin or cello thing going on, right? So one of the things you first got to decide when you're buying stuff is, what's my budget? How much am I willing to spend? Well, you come up with a dollar figure, and then you're going to say, okay, well, what do I need to buy with that, say, $1,500? What do I need to buy? Is it just an instrument? Is it part of a rig? Is it a whole rig? What do I need to buy? And if you're new to this, you may be saying, Matt, what the heck is a rig? A rig is everything you need to make your sound. So instrument, a bow, some cables, maybe a preamp, some effects, maybe a looper, an amplifier, or some sort of special thing that you need to make your sound or speaker. So that is what we would say a rig is. Now, you may have some of this stuff already, and we're just going to answer a couple of questions. So you know what an instrument is, right? We know we got to get an instrument. Do I need a special bow? You do not need a special bow to play an electric violin, viola, cello. You can use whatever bow you use with your acoustic instrument. However, I do recommend having as many bows as you have instruments. If you've got one acoustic and one bow, that's great. When you get an electric instrument, you might be playing your acoustic with your bow and put it away. And then you go grab your electric violin to head off somewhere and play, and you get there, you open up the case, I left my bow at home. That's really bad. So I like to say, let's have as many bows as we have instruments. If you've got some extra bows at home, then you may not need to buy one, okay? How many cables do I need? I generally say however many cables you use, plus one or two. So if you've got a cable from your instrument to your pedal board, another cable from your pedal board to your amp, that's two. I like to have three with me because cables are cheap. We're talking 10, 15, 20 bucks. You don't want a $1,000 show brought to its knees by a $10 cable, okay? And what kind? Well, whatever kind that you're using in your rig, and it's all determined by what the connections are that need to be made. Maybe you've got violin to a preamp, and then a preamp to your pedal board, a pedal board to the cable, right? Each of those are going to be 1/4-inch cables. And then maybe I need to go out of my amp to the sound system is going to be an XLR. Well, I need one. Maybe it's nice to have two, okay? What's a wireless? We sort of mentioned that. And will any kind of wireless work? Well, it turns out that we've got a video on that, and you can see what the thumbnail for that video looks like right here. That's a dashing young fella right there. And if there's a link right down there, you can't click on it on this video, but youtube.com/electricviolinshop.com, spelled out. You're probably watching this on YouTube, so right there, you're on our channel right now. You can just click underneath where it says Electric Violin Shop, and you can look for that video, the cables and wireless, and that's going to give you a little more education on cables and wireless units if you feel like you would like to know more about that. We talked about a preamp. There's another video, there's actually two videos called What's a Preamp and Do I Need One on this same channel, and that's going to help educate you on what a preamp is. Let's talk about effects. What kind of effects should I get? It turns out there's a video for that too. Christian Howes did a fantastic job of putting a video together for us that talks about some of the basic types of effects. And then we've got a bunch of other videos on our channel to talk about the different ways that you can get those. If you decide, hey, I want reverb, hey, there's a bunch of different ways to get reverb. And we can educate you a little bit with some of the other videos on our page here. What's a looper? Same kind of thing. Christian Howes did a fantastic job of putting together a video to talk about what is a looper and how would I use one. You're right here on youtube.com/ChristianHowesTube, and that's going to get you some more information there. Now, the next question is, do I need an amplifier? We talked violin or instrument, violin or cello, viola. Instrument, bow, cables, maybe a wireless, a preamp, effects, a looper, and then an amp. Do I need an amp? I have been touring for over 20 years. I have not more than a handful of time taken an amp on a gig. You don't necessarily need an amp. If you are always playing through a sound system and it's provided by the band that you're touring with or the church or whatever, you may not need to own an amp. Maybe you just need something to listen on your headphones. If you've got a multi-effects pedal, we talked about effects a minute ago, if you have a multi-effects pedal with a headphone output and you're just going to be practicing at home with headphones on, you may not need an amp. Do I need an amp? It's only if I'm not going to be playing through a sound system that's provided by somebody else, or do I need people in the room to be able to hear me? Do I need to be able to hear myself on stage and there's not a monitor for me to do that? Then maybe I would need an amp. And a lot of people say, well, hey, I've got a guitar amp sitting here at home. Will it work? The answer is maybe. And it's often worth trying. So maybe you're going to buy the instrument and the bow and say, hey, I'm going to try the amp that I've got at home. You're not going to hurt anything. The worst case scenario is it's just not going to sound good. So sometimes it's worth trying the amp that you've got at home, and then you can find out if that amp is going to work for you or not. And surprise, surprise, we have a video that talks about these things in a little more detail. And this is what the thumbnail for that video looks like right here on our channel. So we talked about maybe what is my budget going to be. I want you to know sort of what the price floor for these different things are. The very lowest price that you're going to find these items for that are going to be worth your time is listed right here. So for a violin in the neighborhood of $600, below $600, you're really not going to find an instrument that is going to be worth your time. You can find some little cheap crappers on eBay or wherever for $100. You're probably going to spend $300 or $400 at a minimum getting that thing even playable. And even at that point, you're still kind of throwing good money after bad. So we generally say that below $600, we try to go $600 and above on violins, about $1,100 and above on cellos, roughly $100 or and above on bows. We've got some in the $80 or $90 range. And then amplifiers, you're going to be looking at $200 and up for the kind of amplifiers that you're going to want. There are a couple of amps below $200 that are little practice amps that aren't too bad. And we carry some of those on our website. But just to give you an idea of the neighborhood of where the price floors are on these various issues, these various items, I just wanted you to have these dollar figures just sort of put in your head where we're going to start, okay? So how am I going to split up my budget? That's where we finally got to get to. If you're only buying an instrument and a bow, generally what they'll say is about 70-30 is a pretty good split. So if you've got $1,000 to spend, roughly $700 on an instrument and roughly $300 on a bow is a pretty good split. $1,500, you can do the math on there. Roughly 70-30 is not a bad split. You might lean one way or the other a little bit, and that's fine. But 70-30 is kind of a good baseline to have in your mind for how I want to split up my money between an instrument and a bow. If you're buying a whole rig, it sort of starts, and it sounds backwards, but it sort of starts with the amp. So we're going to say, how much amp do you need for your situation? If you don't need an amp at all, okay, that's easy. We put a big fat zero there and spend our money on other things. If you need an amp, then let's start with the amp that you need and then work backwards to find the budget for other items. Say that you've got $1,500 to spend and you're playing in some places that are, you're going to need a fairly substantial amplifier. Well, maybe it's going to be a $300 or $400 amplifier that does what you need it to do. Then we can take that out of the budget. Let's set that $400 aside, and that leaves you with $1,100 to spend on the other things. So we're going to look at roughly a 70-30 split on violin and bow, and we've got to sort of figure out what we've got left for effects and cables and loopers and all that kind of thing. So it's just, you generally want to start with the amplifier that you need and then work backwards to get the instrument and the effects and all that kind of stuff figured out. The other thing to know is that all of this stuff, once you get the instrument, the bow, and the amp, all of the rest of this stuff can be modular. These are things that maybe I need 5 or 6 different effects pedals to get started. No, I do not. Most amplifiers have a little bit of reverb, maybe some chorus or a couple of basic effects in those amplifiers. You may be able to start with just instrument, cable, amp. Okay, if you pick the right amp, it's going to have a preamp built into it. you might be able to just go instrument, bow, cable, amp. And then if I want to add a looper later, after I've had a chance to play with this and save up a little money, I can. Or you can just say over time, maybe I want to start discovering pitch shifters, and I can buy one of those later. So the nice thing about these is they are modular. Once you have a functioning rig, instrument, cable, amp, then you can start adding things later on. And hey, when it's your birthday, you're like, hey, Mom, I've been very good this year. I would like a looper. So I hope that that's been helpful in figuring out how to split up your budget when you're purchasing a rig, when you're shopping on our website. You're like, I've got $1,500 to spend. I've got $1,000 to spend. I've got $5,000 to spend. How am I going to spread this out? Hopefully this video has helped you figure that out a little bit.